how do you stay motivated with something like that?
I guess it's hard to say. I mean, how does anyone stay motivated to just like reset something for hours on end? I guess maybe I just happen to be willing to do a different painful thing than other people are willing to do.
Ah yes, speedrunning. The act of beating a given game as fast as possible while abusing a variety of movement tech, glitches, and all sorts of strats. What happens when a community is bored and goes, well, this is too easy, let's crank it up a notch? Challenge runs are in fact very common in speedrunning communities all around the internet. You hear echoes of blindfolded runs, no-hit challenges, finish the game without jumping, low percent, and whatnot. It's these kinds of runs that can offer a unique and fresh perspective on a game, which many times can result in the discovery of new tech for the main categories, setups, and even future challenges. Some of these runs can feel like a puzzle. How do I beat this level without jumping? What audio cue should I listen to in order to beat this level blindfolded? And how do I finish this boss fight without getting hit? The Harry Potter speedrunning community has a wide variety of categories and speedruns under its belt. However, when it comes to challenge runs, there's two that particularly stand out: Jumpless and Lowcast. Today, we're going to be focusing on the latter, which has very likely become one of the most infamous and difficult puzzles the community's had to solve. A puzzle which runners are still attempting to actively solve to this day. Hey everybody, I'm Seven, and today we'll be going through the history of Lowcast, the hardest Harry Potter speedrun.
The game we'll be looking at is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for the PC. For those unfamiliar, it came out in 2002 and was developed by No Wonder Studios, who worked under EA. It's a 3D platformer jump and run adventure game with collectathon elements. The game follows the events of the second story in the Harry Potter series. As you can imagine, a game like this has a pretty active speedrunning community, taking the world record for any percent just over half an hour since the game's initial launch in 2002. But that's a story for another day. The runners abuse a variety of glitches, most iconic of which is brightness boosting. Every time Harry grabs a ledge and you proceed to change the brightness, he gets boosted in the air. But speedrunners have found a way to make this even faster by something called reloading, which is binding a hotkey to the shortcut of the game. When you press it while in game, this triggers a loading screen to appear, which can be used to unpause the game while you're still in the menu, allowing you to mash the brightness bar, essentially allowing Harry to fly through the air. Other tricks include wall walks, clips, leg jumps, duping healing potions, and so on. By the end of 2016, it was one of the oldest active runners in the community, Tether, who entertained the idea of finishing the game without using the Spongify spell. You know, the one that bounces you in the air. It was discovered that you can skip one mandatory Spongify tile in the forest level by dropping down into a wall walk on the street. For the next one, Tether found a way to do it with one of the gnomes you can carry from earlier. You can cast on it and jump across. There are a couple of ways to skip the Spongify at the beginning of Chamber 1. You could collect 10 bronze wizard cards, which grants you a health increase, making it enough to drop down. Alternatively, Tether found this incredibly difficult backwards boost. By boosting really early into ledge grab animation, you get boosted backwards.
Curry Bro X
has also found a method to survive the fall down with the fire crab. In Chamber 2, an early version of what would later become the main Lowcast strat was discovered, thus proving it was possible to finish Forest and Chamber without using the Spongify spell. A new unique idea was spawned though. Runners asked themselves the question, if we can finish these levels without using Spongify, how many actual spellcasts can we skip? So as 2017 rolled by, notable community members, Tether, Tour of Queen aka TK, and
Curry Bro X
started cooking, and by September they had an early route figured out. It was possible to finish the game in 59 casts based on this route that TK posted. It was only missing the final cast skip in Forest, discovered by Tether. Notably, this route was done during the days where players ran the game capped on 120 FPS, which made skipping the Rictus Sempra level possible by jumping backwards into the entrance of the challenge before it closed. The rules were however changed in December of 2017. Without going into too much detail, the game was now run on 60 FPS instead. As such, Rictus Sempra skip was no longer possible, so the community had an entirely new level to route. Later, a new game-breaking glitch was discovered, Quidditch warping, which allowed runners to skip entire levels by playing Quidditch instead. It was revolutionary for any percent. For Lowcast, the runners ended up making the decision not to allow that trick, as the idea of category was to be a challenge run. More strategies and cast skips were discovered and proven in 2018 and 2019, and Tether created a route document which included all levels of the game. The idea of Lowcast grew more and more popular among active and talented runners of the community, and it was only a matter of time until the first run was performed. The Harry Potter category extensions boards were created on the 2nd of July 2020, and Lowcast was added as an official leaderboard you could submit your runs to on the 19th of December of the same year. The goal of the category was to finish the game as fast as possible in as few casts as possible, and competition was handled the same way. The number of the casts took a priority. For example, if two runners had the same number of casts, then it would be looked at who finished the game faster, and their times would be compared. Initially, the leaderboard was saved in a Google Doc. However, on the 31st of January 2022, the community changed the submission method. The numbers of casts were submitted as hours, the hours of the run were submitted as minutes, the minutes as seconds, and the seconds as milliseconds, multiplied by 10. Aaron performed his run on the 21st of December 2020, only 2 days after the leaderboard was created.
The first world record for HP2 Lowcast started off in Willow, where Avram casted on this gargoyle in order to unlock the way forward and boosted across. He then boosted out of bounds from the luggage and made his way to the end of the level. Before he left, however, he performed the ledge clip at the top here in order to
Number 7, Hesper Starkey, 1881 to 1973, who studied the use of phases of the moon in potion making. The best card.
Sorry about that was weird. Anyway, now in order to survive a pretty lengthy fall in Chamber 2, Avram needed to collect 10 bronze wizard cards to receive a health increase. A few of those can be found simply out in the open, while some can be found inside chests, but seeing as those require a cast, alternatively, you can buy these cards from traders. By skipping all cards in a level you can now go back to, you can then buy them from traders around Hogwarts. A unique way of the developers making sure that even if you miss a secret or two, you can still collect all the cards. So, Avram is going to have to plan his route carefully. He needs to collect enough beans to purchase at least 6 bronze wizard cards. The price of one is RNG and it can be reset every time you bump into a trainer, but the cheapest that you can get a bronze card for is 120 beans. So, at a bare minimum, our runner will need to collect 720 beans and 4 extra bronze wizard cards in order to have enough health to just finish the run. But with that technical yapping out of the way, let's focus on the run itself. Avram boosted up to the grand staircase here, making it to Rictus Sempra, the first spell challenge. He finished the arrow key minigame to maximize his house points, this will be important later, and entering the level, Avram performed the first trick of the run, Crab Manipulation. After letting this fire crab shoot at you, you can then hide out of its side, and as a result, the crab will start walking in a direction, in this case, to the right. So with this, we've already skipped 2 otherwise mandatory spellcasts. You'll also notice Avram collected all challenge stars and beans that were accessible along the way. This is important for later as well. You see, the more challenge stars you collect, the more house points you're rewarded at the end of a spell challenge. So he then lured these 2 snails onto their pressure plates. In this area, both crabs are on a cycle. Using crab manipulation similarly to the first room, Avram can lure this crab to fall on his trap on its own. He has to cast at the other one as it can't be manipulated, it's not that stupid. Moving on, Avram continued to collect beans and stars along his way. He then jumped across this chasm, got a long ledge grab, and boosted all the way up. Normally, in this next room, upon entering, 2 gates close. However, if you're careful, you can just about make it to the trigger that spawns only the crabs and closes the door in front of you, but not the one behind you, as for some reason that's a separate trigger, thus leaving you a lot of room to manipulate one of the crabs. And after a bit of struggling, Avram actually got the crab manip and made it to the last room. Now, upon collecting one last challenge star, he brightness boosted from this ledge and jumped across, collecting the completion star. Now at this point, the more house points you're ahead of Slytherin, the more time you spend in the bean bonus room, or reward level, in which you can collect as many beans as you're able to in a given amount of time. However, instead of going to the ceremony, he went outside, boosted out of bounds, and after collecting a couple of extra beans, made it to an out of bounds trigger, which upon entering spawns you in a Quidditch game. Now these actually reward the player with more house points, and by clicking on a specific game before entering the trigger, you can then play it. This allows you to complete all 6 Quidditch matches before you've even learned how to play Quidditch in this game. Avram won all 6 matches, which guaranteed him a substantial lead in house points over Slytherin. He then finally went over to the house point ceremony and entered the bean bonus room. The second time around, he was more careful the second time around. No! He managed to leave with 346 beans, well on pace for the amount he needed. Now, before actually going to Quidditch practice, Avram purchased a Wiggentree bark from a trader as he was going to need to duplicate a couple of potions later down the line. Avram casts it on the chest with the ingredients and makes his first potion. And he then follows Hermione to the grand staircase where he bought flubberworm mucus from a trader, took the safe book, and used a potion duplication glitch, making 25 healing potions. In the entirety of Scourge, there's only one spell he needs to cast on the first ectoplasm. The entirety of the level is then skipped with one of the most notorious sequence breaks in HP2 speedrunning, Scourge Skip. You see, by lining up to a specific angle and jumping at a specific point, you can get a ledge clip into a wall walk, allowing you to then jump all the way down to the completion star. This trick is somewhat precise, but Avram managed to get it first try without a setup. Having completed Scourge, he once again went to the bean bonus room and ended up leaving with a grand total of 539 beans. However, the next level he had to go through is the most infamous, Bicorn. He jumped through the ectoplasm to enter the level. After casting on the Alohomora door, he performed a boost to get him to a wall walk and then walks across, saving 2 casts. What follows is the first challenge, the Bicorn Pixie Ride. It sounds more fun than it is. You can manipulate this pixie all the way down to the bridge, and then bop on its head over and over until you make it back up to the top. The issue with this strat is that each bop bounces you in a random direction with random speed, making it exceptionally difficult to control. Avram ended up spending around 30 minutes trying to get this trick before finally succeeding, skipping just 1 cast. In the next room then, he manipulated the 2 snails inside the trap. As with these 2 crabs, their manipulation works a little bit differently. They move after shooting you, so instead of hiding from their sight, Avram did the following. He allowed a crab to shoot at him twice. The crab would then move either to the left or to the right, depending on his last movement after shooting. So the pattern goes shoot, shoot, right, shoot, shoot, left. By following this pattern, he managed to get both crabs in their traps fairly quickly. He then dropped to the room below, where he once again guided the 2 snails inside their traps, and took a cast on the ectoplasm, which lowers these stairs. Avram then performs the maze skip. You can drop to a wall walk here, skipping the maze puzzle entirely, saving another 2 casts. The rest of this level will look fairly similar actually to how it looks in any percent. He opens the door with the button, performs wheel skip, takes a cast on the Alohomora door, boosts all the way up, collects all beans along the way, casts on the final Alohomora door, and finally he leaves the level. After Bicorn, you have to duel Malfoy. By pausing the game after casting Expelliarmus, the game stores its animation and thinks you're still casting the spell, So any spell Malfoy fires at you will be automatically reflected back at him. This luckily counts as only one spell cast, as you only press the key for casting the spell once. Now, what follows after this little detour is the Defindo challenge, one of the largest areas in the game. Now, with some very carefully planned boosts out of bounds, Avram collects all of the stars and beans he possibly could without casting any spells. It's actually quite a visually impressive and clever route. Making it all the way back to the beginning of the level, he then drops down and performs what is known as a snail skip. There's a trigger right there that spawns a snail once you hit it and blocks your way forward. With a precise boost off of a medium ledge grab, can boost over the trigger, just barely skipping it and moving forward. Avram managed to perform the boost without any issues. And then these last two snails you can simply lure close to the trap and then bump into them. Bumping into a snail changes the direction in which it's going, which makes it fairly easy to get them both in without casting. And that already gets us to the end of the level. The next level is Boomslang. He boosted out of bounds from this corner and proceeded to collect all available beans he could. Avram actually left the next bean bonus room with a grand total of 895 beans. Going to the grand staircase, Avram brewed 3 more potions for safety, and he then boosts at the grand staircase, skipping 2 minutes of otherwise unskippable cutscenes. The next adventure the developers aptly named Goyle, as you follow Goyle to the gardens to collect a piece of him. Take that as you will. Anyway, so the first trick involves a boost from this block. Upon casting on from behind, you can ledge grab it and boost all the way to the top. Avram did fail it once, having to take a death and try again, but he got it second try. Entering this next room, he took a cast on the web and performed this wall walk to skip the grab trapdoor. Continuing forward, he cast on this trapdoor, which led him outside, and he played the rest of the level semi-casually. Casted on the final gate, and he collected that piece of Goyle that we were talking about. It's hair. Get your mind out of the gutter, damn it. So after turning into Goyle, it was time for Slytherin. Then 2 casts here, so 2 casts on these ropes, 3 casts there, and then there's bridge skip. Yeah, you can just do that. And then after talking to Malfoy in the common room, you turn back into Harry and escape, avoiding all Slytherins along the way. The final spell we learn in HP 2 is Spongify. So by simply casting on the Spongify tile and boosting all the way to the completion star, the level is over in mere seconds. Seems anticlimactic. Anyway, after Spongify, Avram had to gamble with the trader. Remember, he wanted a price cheap enough to be able to purchase 7 wizard cards. Got a reasonable price 6th try, and bought them. Next is the final house point ceremony, which doesn't result in a bean bonus room, and instead gives you an unskippable cutscene with young Hagrid. This allows you to now enter the forest level. We have reached the end game. Boosting from this ledge and then dropping down, Avram was able to skip 2 casts, a Lumos and a Spongify. He then had to perform a trick known as Forest Bridge Skip. However, he ends up falling down, soft locking in the process. Normally, if you cast Lumos earlier, 3 platforms appear, however, casting spells is cringe. So, Avram is forced to reload and try again, and he got the skip he got the skip third. Okay, come on, he gets it 4. Here we go. He gets it on his 5th try. Yay. Well, anyway, he needed to cast on 2 of the 3 webs. You can walk through the first, but not the other 2. And what follows is a drop to a wall walk on this tree, and a jump across. Avram then boosted all the way up in order to...
Number 57, Gifford Ollerton, 1390 to 1441. Famous Giant Slayer, killed the giant hengist of Upper Barnton, the best card.
I knew this video was gonna kill me. He then dropped back to the wall walk and jumped across. He then drops back to the wall walk and jumped across. Boosting up to the final web, Avram is faced with the hardest trick in Forest, the boost across the river. As the river strategies are difficult, Avram ended up spending around 40 minutes to get across, but he finally made it through and proceeded to perform the final trick in Forest, the tree cast skip. By boosting from this rock all the way to the top of the map, you're then able to parkour your way down, and Avram landed in a wall walk, allowing him to drop down safely, cast on the web, and enter the Aragog boss fight. Nothing particularly special about this fight, 8 casts on the webs and 7 on Aragog. When he reveals his weak spot, you deal extra damage, so all Avram had to do was wait. Before entering the final level, he had to collect one last card, the greatest card in all of existence. I love this card to pieces. Did you know that there's actually a special edition of this card where you can have like this translucent unicorn in the back of it? And if you really zoom in on its horn, it actually kind of looks like Portal's penis, located behind Hagrid's hut. Although an odd choice in a game named Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the Chamber of Secrets serves as the final level of this run. Avram had enough health to drop all the way down without dying. He took 2 deaths and then landed on this torch. The next strategy is Scourge Snipe. By aiming at the ectoplasm from above, you're able to just about snipe it and continue forward. Avram struggled quite a bit with this one, as each failed attempt meant he had to take a death or a reload. He managed to get the snipe 7th try though. What follows is known as Chamber Jump. The very precise jump you're able to make it across to the other side, skipping a Spongify spellcast. Avram accidentally cast on the block above, however, forcing a reload, but he got the jump on the 2nd time around. With a few mandatory casts along the way, he entered the Pixie Room. Fucking Pixie Room. Inside the Pixie Room, he got a medium ledge grab boost from this ledge, cast on the rope, and entered Chamber 2. At the beginning, there's this long boost, known as an auto boost, which is used to get all the way to a wall walk, and he then performed the final bridge skip of the run. If you stand on this invisible collision, you can then jump into a medium ledge grab, which Avram did smoothly, and the final noteworthy strat that he went for was the boulder cutscene skip. If you get this wall walk, you can actually drop down without triggering the boulder chase. This allowed Avram to simply boost over the vines one by one without worrying about being crushed. From here, it was time for the Basilisk boss fight. He closed it out with a beautiful 2-cycle fight, and remember, in the Basilisk fight, you don't actually cast seeing as you're fighting with a sword. With the first load of entering the Great Hall, the first submitted HP2 Lowcast run thus ended with a time of 2 hours, 28 minutes and 3 seconds, and a grand total of 70 casts. The run may not have been perfect. There were many mistakes here and there. However, it served as the first chapter of a legendary story, one filled with pain and suffering, but also with some of the most creative strategies the community has come up with. Portal, what kind of a fucking love letter to Lowcast is this? I thought you were a Chungus guy. Jesus. I feel betrayed.
It wasn't long before the category sparked interest with other members of the community. Notable runner Zasta had expressed interest in Lowcast much earlier, providing one of the earliest documented routes. He went for similar strats as Avram, and he submitted a run of his own, one nearly 40 minutes faster than the previous record, with a faster bean route, a better pixie ride in Bicorn, and a faster chamber. A significant route change that Zasta implemented was collecting number 64, Gisunda that doesn't matter, you're going to cut that anyway.
Number 64, Jacunda Sykes, 1915 to present. Famous for flying across the Atlantic on a broomstick, the first person to do so. The best card.
Zasta also got the lag jump in Forest first try. The run did have some slowdowns though. Most notably, he did not have enough beans to purchase 6 cards, so he had to explore the castle to collect a few more. Zasta was also seemingly not sure how to perform the final strat in Forest, and ended up spending a lot of time figuring it out. Aside from that and a few minor slowdowns, his run was overall solid. The final time was 70 casts in 148.50. Naturally, Avram knew he could do better, and he responded. On the 2nd of January 2021, he submitted a run with 2 extra cast skips. It was finally time to implement gnome strategies. The first thing he did was, he cast on this gnome Henriik de Sempra and brought him along for the ride. Avram was careful not to let it wake up again, and successfully got it past the room with the crabs, the puzzle room, and all the way to the chasm. He struggled quite a bit on this one, as getting the gnome on top is difficult, though he did eventually get it. With a very precise gnome throw, you can block the moving door in the room with the 2 crabs before it's all the way down, allowing you to fit through. This is a difficult trick though, as you need to be careful not to trigger the doors early, and the angle and timing are tight. There's invisible collision in the room that the gnome can land on. Avram got the trick on the 4th try. This successfully saved one cast. The other was found in Bicorn. By luring the gnome next to these stairs, it can trip on them. Avram could then pick the gnome up and throw it onto an invisible collision next to the stairs. With a precise jump, you could then go on top of the gnome and then on top of the stairs. This trick is only possible because this is one of the only gnomes in the game that you can stand on. Avram took around 14 minutes to get it, as the gnome can clip you out of bounds during the attempts, killing you in the process. The jump on top of the gnome isn't necessarily easy either. He eventually prevailed and finished the third ever Lowcast world record, clocking in at 68 casts in 2:29:35. There were many slowdowns along the way, deaths while attempting to pick up the grounds card, an overall slower bean route than Zasta's, and failing some of the hard stuff. However, a record is a record, and it was Avram's to keep for a while. The two new strats he had implemented were difficult, and nobody wanted to have to go for them. 5 days later, something remarkable happened. Turath Queen, one of the pioneers of the category, and respected strat hunter and former world record holder for HP1 and HP2, claimed a run of 65 casts in 2:12x. She had allegedly saved 3 casts. How had she done it? Well, as you can imagine, Avram's run did not go for every strat. There were 2 more strats in Bicorn, the door clips. By standing on top of a gnome in front of the 2 Alhomora doors at the end, you can get clipped through the door. This trick was incredibly inconsistent at the time, and it was already in the level that had the pixie ride and the gnome staircase ectoplasm skip. Clipping through the doors was seemingly RNG, and often took a lot of time. Having to perform these clips along with the pixie ride and the ectoplasm stairs clip easily made Bicorn a really tough level to complete. Unfortunately, TK's run was never submitted, and very little is known about the specifics. Even still, a 2:12x with the Bicorn door clips in mind is an incredible time, and was very likely legitimate. TK had also likely implemented a known optimization to Avram's run. You can knock out the first gnome in Rick Decembra without having to cast on it. To do this, you lure it to its hole and then stand on one of the edges. The gnome would eventually trip on one of the small slopes on the sides of its hole. These 3 strategies combined would save a grand total of 3 casts. With 3 casts practically free for the taking, and with TK having performed the run recently, surely someone would try again soon. Right? Well, days and weeks started passing by, eventually months. Avram's run stood on top and he did not want to run it again. He already had the record, nobody was challenging it, and going for the hard stuff was just not fun. Even though the category got 3 quick records during its first month, they were followed by months of silence. And then, there was Nixo.
Nixo is currently the biggest streamer in the Harry Potter speedrunning community. He's known for running every single Harry Potter game in existence, while at the same time managing to maintain an overall solid skill level for pretty much all of them. He often engages in different activities within this community, like GeoGuessr, chess tournaments, he hosts speedrunning tournaments, marbles, and so on. One of these activities, however, particularly stands out as unique, and is likely the most popular. Through channel points, viewers have the ability to request a variety of runs. This includes all kinds of runs, from full game serious leaderboard runs to meme runs, where the viewers get to make up their own rules. Really, the only limitation here is your imagination, and whether or not Nixo would be willing to go through with whatever rules you may think of. One of his viewers was Ratburn44, whom we believe was the one to request Lowcast on Nixo's channel. Despite being completely aware of the difficulty of the run, Nixo accepted the challenge and eventually started up a stream and gave the category a shot. Now, it's worth pointing out that his first run is actually lost to time, as Nixo was able to achieve a run of 68 casts, which was never saved. That run was actually on pace for 67, however he ended up accidentally casting twice on the final web in Forest without noticing, which killed his world record attempt. The attempt we're going to be looking at is from the same day. Immediately it was apparent that Nixo knew what he was doing. He had a pretty decent understanding of the strategies involved, getting them rather quickly. It was time for Bicorn. The pixie ride? Nailed it. Took only 5 minutes of attempts. The stair ectoplasm? He got it way faster than Avram, partly due to a better method he used to knock the gnome down. using the gnome hole. This allowed Nixo to grab the save book with the gnome already in his hand, allowing quick retries. It was time for the door clips. What Nixo had to do first was knock down the gnome at the bottom here. He got it quickly. He then took the gnome, performed the wall walk without issues, and made it past the wheel skip room. The first door to clip through was in sight. After roughly 10 minutes of attempts, Nixo finally got it. Only one was left. He boosted to the top and knocked over the second gnome. During the second door clip, however, disaster struck.
No! It looked so good! Yeah, the category doesn't look...
He was not able to get the first clip again, despite trying for 17 minutes. With morale low, Nixo made the decision to skip that door clip and only go for the second one. After 8 minutes worth of attempts, he managed to get through the second door, and Nixo was now well on pace to beating the world record on both time and casts. He was, however, a bit low on beans, so he ended up routing in Defindo challenge styles as well, making sure to spend more time in the bean bonus room. After an incredibly scuffed bean game, Nixo managed to get the card price he was looking for, 26th try.
Oh, that's so close. Yep, every time you talk to them again, the price varies. And a silver price is a higher margin, but it also varies. Like, it's literally the same card we're buying, but he sells it for different prices, which is great. Yeah, this might take a while, depends on how lucky we get. Like, the chance is not too high because I'm pretty low on beans. Like 127 or less, that's not a high chance. That's pretty bad. Trade a friend. Dude, I ruined your business. Oh, that's the literal lowest it could have been. Cool.
Despite these issues, however, he was able to finish the game at 66 casts, with a time of 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 36 seconds. A world record on both time and casts. It wasn't perfect, he had lost a lot of time to the door clips, and he knew there was still casts to be saved.
Alright, not bad. I'll take it. Like, this is actually pretty solid. 223, I mean, the time is not great, but 66 casts is okay.
So surely enough, 2 weeks later, he returned for the 65. This time, he was determined. No longer how long it took, he would get both door clips in a run. The start of the run was a bit more or less the same.
That's gonna be fine though, right? What? Can you just walk away? You fucking stupid crap.
He struggled a bit with the crabs in Decembra, but managed to get the gate skip with the gnome first try. Then he played Quidditch, as usual, collected beans, and performed Scourge Skip.
Work? What? I swear I wanted to press that, but I guess I didn't press it hard enough. I was just stroking my button, apparently. Okay, that was not a fake. I mean, divination could be interesting, I guess, if you're not like Hermione and don't believe in it.
It was time for Bicorn again. The pixie ride was done in around 6 minutes. The ectoplasm stare took a bit of time, but wasn't too big of an issue. Finally, it was time for the door clips. Wait, has some problem with pixies and gnomes? The fuck does that mean? Let's check the footage.
No, I think it will be. Okay, and he's gone. Dude, this is actually pissing me off, I have to admit. Don't tell me we're gonna get the pixie glitch again, please. That's all I want. No. Piss off. Or bite me. No! This is so weird. How does this happen? What is this? Why? Who made this room? So now we're fucked or what? Dude, they're literally stupid. I don't know what to do. I can't lose the gnome either. Okay, he either kills me here or we make it. Dude, please.
Okay then. Then after an hour, the unthinkable happens.
Yeah, but essentially that way I tried to manipulate him. I hate everything. 1.5 hours for this shit. 1.5. Don't count.
The first recorded run to get both door clips. A historical feat. At this point, it did not matter how long the run would take, Nixo would be getting a world record. Even still, he had lost a lot of time to the door clips, but was overall satisfied with his accomplishment, stating, however, Nixo knew deep down that he wasn't done. There was one last cast he could save, but where? This is the infamous Gnome Corridor, a strategy found by
Heather.
and proved possible in 2 casts by
Heather.
by far the hardest cast skip in Rictus Emperor. What you do is you knock the gnome down, you get it to collect the bean, then position yourself just behind the trigger that opens the trapdoor and the crab areas. That trigger also happens to close the door in front of you. If you throw the gnome across and are lucky enough for him to go close enough to the door, you can precisely cast on the gnome, enter the trigger, and thus block one of the wooden bars and leave the room in only 2 casts, not 3. This strategy, especially back then, was an RNG nightmare. It would require incredible patience, comparable to the bicorn door clips. However, if anyone was going to go through with it, it would be Nixo. So after a lengthy break of 4 months, he was back in the saddle. The tension was high as he entered Rictus Emperor. He failed again and again and again. The gnome just kept going the wrong way, the casts weren't enough, and Nixo was losing morale. And then, it happened. We have a run. We continue. The rest of Rictus Emperor and Quidditch went well, though he did mess up the potion duping. He wanted to try again in the Transfiguration classroom, but it was locked, so he continued and duped after Scourge. And we're back in Bicorn. The Pixie was even kinder than before, Nixo managing to get it in 4 minutes. The stairs were not so kind though, they took around 7 minutes. It was time for the door clips. Last time they'd taken well over an hour. Nixo managed to get through them in less than 30 minutes this time. The trader was 22nd try this time, and Nixo bought 7 wizard cards. He got the waterfall boost in forest first try, Scourge Snipe was 3rd try, and Chamber Jump was 1st try. The Chamber 2 auto boost took a few attempts, but he got there in the end. And with a 4-cycle Basilisk fight to close it out, Nixo had officially achieved the first Lowcast run with the theoretical minimum. 64 casts in 2 hours, 48 minutes, 7 seconds. An amazing run, beating the previous record on both casts and time. There was no point in playing anymore, unless he wanted to improve his time. And with strategies like the Rictus Emperor Gnome Corridor and the Bicorn shenanigans, that wasn't going to happen. Unless a new cast skip was found.
What we just witnessed is a strategy used to beat this level in just 4 spellcasts. During one of his meme runs, Nix was playing Lowcast Bobo Percent, and in chat, Lowcast enthusiast Ratburn and had an idea. Was it possible to save a casting oil by using the mushrooms? The way mushrooms work is explained by Professor Sprout.
Once you have separated a hawk lamp from its stem, you can pick it up and throw it.
This knocks out other enemies, but it also causes stems of other mushrooms in a small area. By drinking a potion or taking damage, you can drop a mushroom without destroying it. So by gathering enough mushrooms and getting them all on the correct side, it's possible to create a staircase of mushrooms that lead to the library area. From here, a mushroom can be dropped in order to get on top of the chair, skipping the webcast. Mushrooms are then carried all the way across the walkway, past the room with the pixie and the ectoplasm, and dropped through the web we usually boost over. After you get 5 mushrooms and a gnome all the way across, you can then use the gnome to stack 5 mushrooms on top of each other. For the final shroom, you drink a potion, and as such you can jump over the second web, ultimately saving 1 cast. This route is really creative, long and difficult. It was theorized and proven by Mark and Ratburn. Mark was the first to perform this mushroom route in an individual level setting, officially bringing the theoretical minimum for Lowcast at 63. The level took Mark over an hour to complete, as there's a lot that can go wrong. The save books are few and far apart. It's very easy to lose mushrooms in the ectoplasm area or to accidentally fall off the walkway to the crab. Any major fails like that will result in a devastating reload, forcing you to replay a large portion of the level. It wasn't necessarily difficult, but the process was long, tedious, and there was a lot that could go wrong. And this was a trick performed off the Bicorn and the Rick December Gnome corridor. Even still, this lowered the number of required casts, so it was an inevitability that Nixo would return. And so he did. On the 30th of March, he fired up the game again and got to the grind. This was Nixo's third day of doing attempts. Then there was the barrier gnome block.
Oh my god, stop walking this direction, I swear to god.
Even with that fail, within 18 minutes he was already successfully past it. The gnome gate block was this time second try.
Nice. Sorry gnome friend, leaving you behind.
Nixo then proceeded to do all 6 Quidditch matches. A new strategy had been implemented in potions. By maneuvering precisely through these triggers, you could leave Snape's classroom and dupe the potions early, thus eliminating the need of purchasing ingredients and saving 125 beans.
Yo Alex, how does it work? If you make a potion, the ingredients actually fly into the cauldron, and right now they're out of bounds, they're behind the wall, so they fly into the wall, but they don't make it through, I guess. So we don't lose them.
A huge optimization to make sure you have enough. Surprisingly, he made Bicorn look easy. He got a pixie ride within 7 minutes and both door clips within 13 minutes. Certainly a most impressive feat. With the pressure of good pace under his belt, Nixo finally entered Goyle. The route was still very new. In total, Nixo spent roughly 72 minutes in Goyle, losing roughly 44 of which to reloads.
I believe we have 6 extra. What? Oh my god, it happens again. It fucking happens again. I hate this fucking level so much. It's so bad. No. I hate this game! Why did he even turn?
Even still, he made it out, on pace for a 63 cast run. All he had to do now was be careful not to accidentally cast. For the trader, Nixo got 8th try, saving a large amount of time to his previous run. In Forest, he got everything first try.
Would do that, but it just sounds really hype. Oh, okay.
In Chamber, he got Scourge Snipe first try.
This might be a pain, but okay, never mind.
And Chamber Jump 5th try.
Can you look away for like the next 5 minutes? Thank you. Oh, that helped. Thank you, appreciate it. Oh yeah.
He hit the auto boost at the beginning of Chamber 2 first try as well, and closed it off with a 3-cycle snake, once again proving that Lowcast, no matter how insanely difficult, would not defeat him. The run clocked in at 63 casts in 3 hours, 17 minutes and 55 seconds. After the perfect Lowcast was achieved, it was only beatable in time, and Nixo was no longer interested in doing so.
I probably should be, right? You're Wolf as well. Yeah, if anyone wants to beat that, feel free to. I won't take it back. This has been beyond painful.
However, he was not the only person doing attempts.
Merely 1 month after Nixo's run, it was Ratburn Try 44 who was the second person to achieve a run with 63 casts. Ratburn had been following the category for a while and was a genuine fan of Lowcast. His first submitted run was by no means perfect, a time of 5 hours, 44 minutes and 52 seconds. What was remarkable about this run is that he did it with almost no prior practice, save for Bicorn, Goyle and the Richter Semper gate skip at the end. Everything else he just kinda went for and just got at some point. It was very impressive to see someone new take on this Goliath of a category and finish it with the minimum casts possible. No one could have predicted, however, what Ratburn would end up doing next.
Class, you really worked hard today. Class, you really worked hard today. Now that the school day is through, I've got something special for you. Homework tonight. Homework tonight. Homework tonight. Homework tonight. Read 19 chapters of history to solve.
Within his first 3 attempts, Ratburn managed to beat Nixo's world record by 27 seconds. Beating a veteran like Nixo was a great achievement, and he was self-taught in all strats. Ratburn had figured out consistent setups for the Bicorn door clips that worked rather well for him, making a really difficult part of the run trivial for him. He was also really good at the Richter Semper Gnome strategy, being able to get it first try in runs. He had actually gotten a way faster time before this, although it was rejected due to audio issues. Even still, this was the first person to perform a 63 cast run twice, and he just kept going.
Some Lowcast mystery. Just a little spell tech tonight. Show the gnomes that you have no fright. Lowcast tonight. Lowcast tonight. Lowcast tonight. Lowcast tonight. I ran out of things to say, 'cause I cannot sing.
A sub 2 hours 63 cast run. How was this possible? Well, a new strategy was discovered, one that saved a massive amount of time and also made the run less random and tedious. By manipulating this crab out of his residence in Chamber 1, you can have it fall down and you with it. If you fall on top of the crab while it's still falling down, you could survive the large drop in Chamber 1 without needing the extra health increase. This discovery routed the 10 bronze cards out of the run. The first person to perform this in a run was U_0001, aka Human. During his 66 cast attempts, he successfully managed to pull it off. By implementing this strategy, Ratburn was able to improve the record once again. He was officially the king of Lowcast. Nobody was challenging him, and he was really good at the unique tricks involved. With the time being lowered significantly, it was getting more and more difficult to improve the record, so Ratburn needed a way to skip another spellcast. And after extensive research into an infamous Defendo pixie ride, he did it. Well, everybody, this is how long the first 62 cast run took. It was a strategy in Goyle. Ratburn had found a way to skip the complicated mushroom route. By knocking this gnome out and taking him all the way up through this clever path, he then performed a pixie ride straight to the armchair while holding the gnome. From there, Ratburn hit the wall walk and made his way to the 2 webs at the end. This is where the fun started. Ratburn threw the gnome on top of the second web and boosted up to the first. Upon waking up, the gnome will go in another random direction. If you're lucky, it will go towards you. You can then quickly drop on top of the gnome as it's falling and get bopped to the other side of the web. This was very likely the hardest and most RNG low-cast strategy ever discovered. Every time you would fail, you'd have to take a death and try again. Ratburn tried over and over and over again. He finally got an attempt in which, after an excruciating 4 hours, he finally nailed it. From here, it was a free world record.
This was the first discovered cast skip in around a year, a monumental feat. That gnome bounce and pixie ride together made the world record insanely difficult, especially when combined with all other already hard low-cast strategies. Ratburn, however, was not done. He continued hunting, and it was not very long before he produced results. He found himself in Chamber 2, discovering 2 wall walks, right next to each other at the end. You could jump from one wall walk to the other, and then boost through the cracks in the wall, essentially skipping a cast on the rope. 61 was a possibility all of a sudden. However, with the difficulty of the new strategies in Goyle, Ratburn was in for a challenge. Getting past the gnome bounce is a painful experience, but the new skip, the record was not beatable anymore, at least on time. 61 would have to wait, for now. Ratburn started focusing on improving his time, and soon enough he got a run with a new strategy in Chamber, achieving 62 casts in 1 hour, 35 minutes and 16 seconds. An impressive time, once again demonstrating he was the king of lowcast. The description read. And practice he did, only 20 days later he beat that run by an astonishing 24 minutes, with a time of 1 hour, 11 minutes and 16 seconds. A remarkable run. This was the fastest lowcast run ever performed, managing to beat the previous 2 fastest runs by Portal and Human. Ratburn beat those on casts and time alike. And with that dominating run under his belt, he proclaimed, and the 61 did happen, and this time the gnome cooperated.
But everything is okay, 'cause Ratburn will win. HB to lowcast, HB to lowcast, HB to lowcast, HB to lowcast.
Ratburn had done the impossible, an overall clean run with a Goyle hours faster than last time he attempted the gnome bounce. He had also found a new optimization for the pixie ride in Goyle, by riding it to the lamp and then performing a second ride to the chair. He was much more consistent than the previous method he used. He was unlikely to beat his run. Lowcast was nearing its limits. Beating the run on time wasn't really plausible anymore, unless someone got an insanely lucky gnome bounce. Grinding for that would be quite a pain, even for Ratburn, and finding another cast skip seemed unlikely. His and Tether's efforts resulted in the discovery of another one. By throwing the gnome above Harry's head at a specific angle, you could then boost through these bars at the end of Goyle. All of a sudden, a run with 60 casts was possible. However, Ratburn once again decided to use the new strategy to improve and secure his 61 time first. And so he did. He got a time of 1 hour and 33 minutes and 43 seconds on December 12th, 2023. A massive improvement by almost 2 hours. His efforts then turned to looking for new cast skips, and he did indeed find something promising in Spongify. It's possible to finish the level without casting with a really precise gnome bounce of a candle. However, this is very inconsistent. It would take a lot for it to be viable. I don't think anyone would have expected what the next discoveries would be though.
Over the next few months, the community's efforts would yield fascinating results. Strategies were found, which when then combined would net a theoretical run of 51 spellcasts. The biggest of these discoveries was no doubt the Aragog Fling, found by Human, aka U_0001. The strategy that saves 7 spellcasts. In Ratburn's own words, it works like this. Other discoveries included a clip into a wall-walking forest, discovered and proven by Coney, who later found a setup for it. A clever boost at the beginning of Goyle found by Ratburn. If you stack 2 shrooms on top of each other, and then throw the third one at a precise angle, you can boost through the doorway all the way to the top. You would then pick up a mushroom, placed there in advance via a portion, and performed the sideways jump, known as Dumb Goyle. Ooman then found a viable method to finish the Spongify level without casting, by clipping into a wall walk above the gnome hall on the right. You can then ledge grab the platform and then boost all the way to the top. With all of these strategies in mind, Ratburn would set off to improve the record further, and he had work to do. On January 15th, he performed the first run with the Shroom boost in Goyle, achieving a run of 60 casts. You'll notice his resolution is weird. The reason for that is because if you stretch the game downwards, you can actually see the screen below the menu. Ratburn stretched it enough to have sufficient visibility for the precise boost he needed. The strat took quite a bit of time, since the boost itself is very difficult, but eventually he did get it, and clocked in a time at 4 hours 20 minutes and 7 seconds. A very impressive run, but nevertheless, with the Aragog fling on the table, sub 60 was an inevitability, and sure enough, it arrived. There it was, the first performed run with the Aragog fling and the Spongify wall walk. The mushroom boost from Goyle was missing in this run, as it was difficult and could potentially take hours. The Aragog fling itself took a little over 2 hours, but he did get it eventually. The run was magnificent. There weren't many cast saves left. 10 hours.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on.
The dude spent over 10 hours in this video game. 4 hours in Goyle, 4 hours in Aragog, and over 2 hours of the in-between. This run was a testament to Ratburn's patience, hard work, and determination. Even still, he didn't get there alone. The community's efforts throughout the years, the initial routing by the category, the discovery of setups, Nixo's grind, new runners discovering new strategies and implementing optimizations, it had all come to this, the perfect low-cast run. Well, at least in terms of the number of casts anyway. The run wasn't perfect. For example, it failed the dumb Goyle jump 3 times, making the Goyle level significantly longer than it needed to be. The Aragog fling took around 4 hours this time. However, he did eventually get past it. An alternative to the gnome bounce was found in the meantime as well. Ratburn would lure this gnome to eat a mushroom halfway, making its hitbox very small in the process, an optimization used since the first 60 cast run. By then taking the gnome and the mushroom to the web, at the end, Ratburn could drink a potion, dropping the mushroom on the gnome and jumping on it, boosting over the web. This method was found a lot easier than the gnome bounce, and that was it. The record could only go down in time now. A sub 2 hours run in 51 casts. Ratburn had done the unbelievable. He had remained the unchallenged champion of Lowcast for well over 2 years, having improved the record a grand total of 14 times. This is by far the longest reign anyone has had in the category to this day, it was clear that he was unmatched, in a league of his own. Nobody could possibly catch up to his.
Coney is a notable community member who took a liking to Lowcast and is known for his many contributions to the category. One example is his much easier method of performing the final boost in Goyle. Coney found a setup for boosting into the barn by boosting before Harry turns in order to get a different direction, a method also used to make the shroom boost vastly easier. Him and Ratburn also found a way to finish the Spongify spell challenge without jumping, essentially making every individual level of HP2 beatable jumpless. In short, Coney is good at finding unique strategies and thinking outside of the box. As his first speedrun category excluding individual levels, he chose Lowcast, and it was quickly apparent that he had talent. He had sophisticated setups for the difficult strats, as well as a really solid understanding of HP2 as a game. Interestingly, he wasn't reloading. He was performing all of his boosts manually through the menu. This lost him a lot of time throughout his runs, however his consistency in the difficult Lowcast strats more than made up for that. All that, combined with Ratburn's help, on May 31st, Coney ended the 2-year-long Ratburn reign of HP2 Lowcast, achieving a run of 51 casts and a time of 1:53:38. The run was beautiful, getting every single strat rather quickly, especially the Aragog Fling, which only took around 8 minutes, and overall better and quicker setups for strats like the Shroom Boost in Goyle and the final Wall Walk in Chamber. A well-deserved achievement for all the hours he had put in. The research, strat hunting, setups and practice had finally paid off. Ratburn then retaliated, taking the record back mere 2 days later with a time of 1:47:32, reminding us all that he was not to be underestimated. Ending Ratburn's reign, however, was not the only noteworthy achievement of Coney's. As mentioned before, he had also found one of the most recent cast skips, the Forest Wall Walk. His most impressive achievement, however, is the discovery and proof of the final known cast skip in HP2, the route of the Bowtruckle boost. This complicated route combines the 3 most brutal strategies in Goyle, all in an effort to save one last cast. A fitting conclusion to the Goyle saga, the level was now beatable in just a single spellcast. However, the Bowtruckle boost was tricky, not to mention in combination with everything else. Lowcast had become a horrifying monster of a category. From the Gnome Corridor in Rictus Sempra, to the Pixie Ride and Door Clips in Bicorn, to the Bowtruckle boost, into Pixie Ride and hellish Gnome Bounce, all culminating with the inconsistent and tedious Aragog Fling. Not to mention, Chamber was not necessarily easy either. This had without a shadow of a doubt become the greatest challenge run in Harry Potter speedrunning, and runners were still not done with it. With the new painful combination of strats on the board, both Coney and Ratburn set off to get the record. The race for 50 was officially on. Both runners would get a few runs going, however it was usually the Gnome Bounce at the end of Goyle that ended up killing the run. It was frustrating. Some of these strats could take hours upon hours on end.
Alright. At least we're almost through this. Jesus fucking Christ. Who would have thought that a category called Lowcast would have such a high minute count? Oh well. Oh. It's only like 1 or 2 more chapters, right? Are you people fucking kidding me? Seriously? No. For real. Really. Are you people fucking kidding me? This is bullshit. For the love of God, can you just go like 5 fucking minutes without finding a new bloody trick in this fucking game? It's been 20 years. Leave it the fuck alone. It's this kind of shit that makes your runs end up being like 30 minutes, even though we were supposed to be playing these games for like 10 hours. Do you know that my first fucking 100% run of this game was 5 hours? No, wait, sorry, that was the first one. It was like 10 hours? This is... Okay, fine. On October the 22nd, 2024, there was a rediscover of a trick that once was thought to only be possible at 120 frames per second. The trick itself is called Richter Skip. Pretty much, as long as you enter the level of Richter Sempra and then you jump back a couple of times, which is the way that I'm understanding this, you can actually skip the entire level. You pretty much just leave out of it, as discovered by our most beautiful Frenchman here.
Oh my god! Oh, no! No, man, no! There's no way!
The thing that you hear here is Flo being suggested lag jumps jokingly by Coney, him trying them out and actually succeeding the skip. Now, of course, you might imagine that in a challenge run like Lowcast, this would make it quite a substantial decrease of the amount of casts that you would have to do. However, of course, it also sort of beats the purpose of beating the entire game, you know, with as little cast as possible. So, without going into too much detail, after a while the community looked at this and agreed the trick would not be allowed in both warpless and Lowcast. Therefore, the category was technically unaffected by this little trick. In the months after this run, the record was exchanged several times between Ratburn and Coney. Eventually, Coney got the record with a time of 1:49.50 on the 18th of October 2024. The run was overall fast and the Aragog fling took just a couple minutes. This marked the start of a period where further improvements were no longer feasible without some more intense grinding, and the run was harder than ever before. But Ratburn was not deterred. After some attempts across 3 months, he got it. He reached Goyle quickly and did all the strats in only a few attempts, leaving on an unheard of pace. And while the Aragog fling slowed him down, he still managed to get out before Coney's run, finishing the game 4 minutes faster with a time of 1:45.44 on the 14th of January 2025. Now this record would prove rather strong. So strong in fact that Coney never beat it. At least not in 50 casts. This is the Slytherin statue room. The idea is that you can cast at these 3 statues to make the floor move up, so you can progress. For a long time, that's what was done in Lowcast. While it was known that if you made it onto the statues, you could get all the way up, nobody knew how to reach that point in the first place, as there really wasn't much to work with outside of these 3 gnomes. But after a few hours of hopeless trial and error, Coney had an idea. You see, this room has wall walks. They never really seemed that useful since you can't stand on them, and the ones you can reach are too steep and you just slide down. Luckily, that property can still be utilized. If you put a gnome into one of these wall walks, it'll slide into the corner or onto the floor and stop. Sliding into a corner is the more interesting case, because, as you can see, the gnome stays above the ground. Using precise positioning, you can drop or throw all 3 gnomes into wall walks and have them block each other to stop sliding at different heights. If this is done a certain way, you end up with this. You can't stand or jump on the gnomes either, instead you bounce, so you have to bounce up this monstrosity that vaguely resembles stairs or a ladder, or my ex, to get about an extra jump's worth of height. With some luck, when bouncing on the highest gnome, you can get into a wall walk. One that you can actually stand on and jump out of, making it possible to get to this statue, walk across some invisible collision, and go up one last wall walk, saving 3 casts. After a few weeks of both Ratburn and Coney looking for setups, Ratburn decided to tackle optimal Slytherin first. So he started a run, breezed through the early game, even made it through Goyle pretty quickly, and entered Slytherin, having gotten an extra health bar so he could use 2 potions instead of just 1 for precise gnome placement. 2 hours 20 and a bottle of Pinot later, he made it out, having saved 3 casts. The rest of the run went smoothly, except for Aragog, which took like half an hour due to a missed crit that forced her reload after a really fast fling. It was a whole thing. The final time was 4:44:33 with only 47 casts on the 26th of February 2025. Now, having practiced Slytherin as well, Coney tried to beat the new record the very next day. Even though he didn't go for an extra health bar, his run started out about equal to Ratburn's. The biggest difference in Coney's run was the time Slytherin took, only 1 hour and 15, and he didn't drink an entire bottle of Pinot during it. The Aragog flick took about half an hour, just as it had for Ratburn, and so Coney ended with a time of 3:32:03, once again with only 47 casts on the 27th of February 2025. Now, after almost another full year, the 23rd of January 2026, Ratburn submits a 2:09:19 with 47 casts. Some notable big time saves: Goyle, a first try bow truckle boost, and a fast gnome bounce. And Slytherin, significantly faster than Coney's run. He was like 1 hour and 20 minutes ahead. But of course, as you'd expect, Coney would respond with a run of his own, mere days later.
With years of theorizing and community efforts dating all the way back to 2016, struggles, pain, and crazy optimizations, this is where the record stands today. Ratburn and Coney's saga will no doubt continue, as both will aim to improve that time. HP2 Lowcast has become the most infamous and painful category the Harry Potter speedrunning community has ever seen.
Oh, that's funny. You really think this run is painful? You don't know anything. Let me tell you about the run that took 7 of my 10 brain cells and made me prefer eating sand over playing a video game.
Oh my god, dude! Fucking work! I'm sorry.
Dude, I can't get this. It's just bullshit. It's actually just bullshit.
Oh shit, that's over. No!
It's fine, this part is just hard. Oh my god, dude, this is the any percent strat. Stop fucking it up. Thank you. fucking this up so much? What? Oh, fuck off. How was that not it? Okay, I don't know. That's gonna take a while. Oh my god. For fuck's sake. I love it when auto boosting just doesn't work. Nixo complaint. Nixo complaint. Nixo complaint. For fuck's sake, work, you degenerate piece of bad software. Thank you. To all the gods of every religion, please, just this once,